Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Ready to go deep with Moltmann? We're diving into his ethics of hope today.
Looking forward to it.
We're going to tackle how faith, really that faith fueled by hope,
Yeah.
how can that inspire action in this crazy world? And not just like feeling hopeful.
Right.
Moltmann takes it a step further. You shared some really fascinating excerpts with me.
Yeah, Moltmann doesn't see hope as just some kind of wishful thinking. It's more than that. It's a force for change.
It's active.
It's active, exactly. So it's not about escaping the world. It's about transforming it. He calls it transformative eschatology.
Whoa. Okay. Break that down for me a bit.
Basically, it means that anticipating the future, this idea that God's kingdom is coming, that actually fuels our work to make things better right now.
So we're not just sitting around waiting.
No, we're living out that hope now. And this is where his critique of the traditional Lutheran two kingdoms doctrine comes into play. You familiar with that?
Yeah, kind of the idea that faith and politics shouldn't mix. Like what we believe should stay separate from how we engage with the world.
And Moltmann says that's a problem. He argues that this kind of separation can actually lead to inaction, even to accepting injustice in the world. Because if faith is just this private thing, it's easy to become complacent about the suffering we see around us.
We turn a blind eye.
Exactly.
Even though our faith might tell us to do the opposite.
He's pushing for something more nuanced. He says, Christian love shouldn't be confined to our personal lives. It needs to engage with the broken systems of the world, challenge those systems.
So it's not enough to be a good person. We're called to help create a just world.
That's it. We're called to be agents of change, and that's fueled by our hope.
That reminds me of the Anabaptists and their, radical commitment to nonviolence and peace. They were all about actually living out Jesus's teachings, putting the Sermon on the Mount into practice.
Moltmann was really drawn to that. He saw them as a powerful example of what it means to truly follow Jesus, taking action, standing up for what's right.
It's not just about words, right? It's about putting your faith into action.
Yeah.
But it's tricky. Moltmann also saw how withdrawing completely from the public sphere could be problematic. How do you live authentically in a world that doesn't necessarily share those values,
It's a balance, that's for sure. And it's something Christians have wrestled with for ages. How do you engage without losing yourself in the process?
It's a huge question and one we should definitely keep in mind as we go. But I think it's time we shift gears a bit and address the elephant in the room. The very real threat of nuclear war. We're living with that reality.
And that brings a whole other level of fear and anxiety to the table.
Definitely. So how does Moltmann deal with that? How do we face that kind of existential threat? We'll dive into that after the break. Back to that threat, the nuclear one. How does Moltmann say we face something like that?
Well, he reminds us that we're not facing it without hope. We have this hope grounded in resurrection.
Which changes how we view, everything.
Right, because death doesn't have the final word. It gives us the courage to really live, even with that threat hanging over our heads.
To love life, to fight for it. Makes you think about what it even means to be human, to really live a human life.
And Moltmann tackles that too.
Which is so relevant now with all the technology.
He uses the example of sterilization, actually. If we can choose to permanently change our ability to have children, what does that mean for the idea of procreation as God's will?
Right. It's fascinating.
It's more complicated than it used to be.
We've got all these options now.
And this is where his call for a bigger, broader understanding of life comes in.
Not just this narrow view.
We need to embrace it all,
All the messy, complicated parts of it.
Our interdependence, our community, our vulnerability, aging, even death. Those are all part of what it means to be human.
Not things to be afraid of.
Exactly. And that kind of leads into his ideas about health. What does it mean to be healthy? Especially in a world obsessed with, optimizing everything.
Always trying to be better, stronger, faster.
He says we're missing the point, reducing health to just this physical condition.
And it's everywhere. The fitness craze, all the anti-aging stuff. It's like we're at war with our own humanity.
Trying to cheat death, almost.
But we're missing out on part of the experience.
And that's what he's saying. We need to value our vulnerability, accept our limits, our mortality. That's part of it all.
Which brings us right back to that question we started with. How do we create a culture that values life, that embraces solidarity in a world driven by fear, competition,
It's a huge question. And I think Moltmann would point us back to that radical hope, that Christian hope. He talks about the early church community in Acts, how they were of one heart and soul, sharing everything, caring for each other.
Sounds kind of utopian. in a way.
It does, right? But maybe that's the point. It's a different way of seeing things.
Not just focusing on lack, but abundance.
And maybe that's where we need to start, rethinking our relationship with, well, with everything. Ourselves, each other, our resources, the planet.
It's a tall order.
It is. But maybe if we start with hope, who knows?
Maybe that's what makes all the difference. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about how we can actually put these ideas into practice. A lot to think about here. We've talked about hope, engaging with the world, needing a wider lens for life and health. But how do we actually live this out? What does this look like day to day?
It's one thing to talk about these ideas, right? It's another to actually put them into practice.
Exactly. So let's get practical. What are some things we can do, concrete things, to make Moltmann's vision a reality?
Well, I always come back to that interconnectedness we talked about, Seeing how our actions, even the small ones, can have a ripple effect. Shifting our thinking from me to we.
Thinking about the well-being of others and the planet even, not just ourselves.
It could mean pushing for fair policies, supporting groups doing good work, even just being more mindful of what we buy and how we live.
It's about aligning our actions with our beliefs.
Yeah.
Putting our faith into action.
And giving ourselves some grace. It's not about being perfect. It's about taking those steps, even if they're small, those everyday acts of love and kindness, and letting them have an impact.
Because they really can.
Yeah.
Especially when we act together, right?
Absolutely. And, one of the most powerful things Moltmann emphasizes is not giving in to despair. There's so much suffering in the world. But Christian hope, it gives us the courage to keep fighting, to keep working towards that better future, even if it's hard, even if we don't see results immediately.
It's about planting those seeds.
Planting those seeds of hope and remembering we're not alone in this. So many people have come before us working to make the world a better place. We can draw on their strength, their example, and on each other's.
That's so important, that community, sharing that purpose. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all, but knowing we're in this together, it makes all the difference.
Moltmann reminds us that even when things are tough, when it feels like we're surrounded by darkness, hope is still possible. It's that hope, that belief in change, that empowers us to make a real difference.
To be those agents of change he talks about. That's love, compassion, a vision for something better.
And never underestimate those small acts, the kindness, the justice, the love. Those can spark so much hope, more than we realize.
That's a great point to end on. So on that note, we're wrapping up our deep dive into ethics of hope. Hopefully this got you thinking about how you can live out your faith in a world that, frankly, really needs it.
It's been great exploring this with you.
And to everyone listening, we always love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you? How are you finding hope and acting on it in your own life? Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and as always, keep diving deeper.